Hello and welcome to Shpielberg. I'm Nathan.
I think I came in the wrong door. I thought this was Ridley Talks.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, sorry. Hello and welcome to Ridley Talks. I'm Nathan. No. I'm the reverse of Nathan. I'm John.
And I'm Nathan.
We're your co-hosts here talking about films, video games, Ridley Scott and Ridley Scott. In other words, we're here to give you the Ridley. Okay. All right. You guys are probably wondering what the heck is happening. I mean, we are literally... Oh, I don't think we've done a Shpielberg movie yet, right?
Correct, we have not.
Okay, well, it's coming. Don't worry. But we thought would be most appropriate for the month of May. Everyone knows it. It's the big thing around May. Is clearly Blade Runner. So that's obviously what we're doing.
May the Blade Runner be with you.
Yeah. May Deckard force you to kiss him. So that's what we're doing today, and we're very excited. Also, another weird thing we're doing. It was your friendly neighborhood co-host, John's turn last episode, but we thought it was very appropriate also for him to do co-hosting this episode. So we're breaking all the rules today, okay? All the rules are broken. They're on the ground, broken, shattered, like your dreams, okay? So
unless your dream was us doing this episode,
then you are most benefited from this situation.
If this was on your bingo card, please put that in the chat.
Speaking of bingo, when you get that beautiful bingo line, you know, where it says bingo, I don't know. I've never played bingo. I'm sorry.
What?
Well, okay, not
serious?
like real bingo, not like the really amazing 70-year-old and plus people who play bingo for money. I've never played that. I've never dabbled in the bingos. But anyway, when you say bingo, that's the most exciting you could ever be. You know, the other thing that makes you most excited in the world, aside from bingo? What do you think it is, John?
Cheese?
Nope. It is supporting Shpielberg on coffee. That is ko-fi.com/Shpielberg, as you see it on your screen right now. And it is just as elating as bingo. Here's the benefits. Listen to the benefits, our beautiful viewers. You get, so far, I think as of this video, you get 13 hours of additional content, me of John running around playing Majora's Mask. And you get constant updates, maybe, of me and John on coffee. And you can comment, like, all that stuff and join our little community there. It is just as good, if not better, than bingo.
And cheese.
And cheese. Come on. That's actually incredibly true. Extra sharp Tillamook cheese is like the best thing aside from scripture. So,
you're not a pepper jack guy?
What? I don't know. In my youth. That's like a Subway classic. You know, you get the pepper jack. But anyway. All right. John, your co-host. Well, you're hosting this week. Lead us in our discussion.
Yes, so today, as Nathan already said, we are covering Blade Runner, the original from 1982, based off of is it novella, I guess is the proper term? Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. This movie is one of my favorites. How about you, Nathan? What are your thoughts?
You know, it is up there. I think the Blade Runner series now, sneak peek, since it's Blade Runner month, may the Blade Runner be with you, I am doing the second half, which is one of my favorite films. So I think the Blade Runner series really is. And it's not Ridley Scott, okay? So we're not doing, it's Denis Villeneuve or something like that. But yeah, I love the Blade Runner series.
So Nathan, before we start with our likes and dislikes, how about you give us the plot of Blade Runner as blurby and brief as possible?
That, you know, we're known here for being incredibly succinct, John, so I really appreciate you bringing me
our episodes
to the plot blurb.
Are only an hour long.
Well, you know, you should see the uncut versions. Anyway,
That's true.
Plot blurb. Blade Runner, the majestic Ridley Scott film, set in a much different future, or rather past for us. We see LA at its finest in 2019. This futuristic world is painted with different consumeristic agendas, and the Tyrell Corporation really is the centerpiece. Tyrell Corporation created these beings called synthetics. They are basically their robot equivalent to humans, and they do things for humans, and they're supposed to be off-world, but we have some of them who develop these emotional experiences and come down to Earth, and they are supposed to be eradicated. So a force called the Blade Runner Force is sent out to kill and remove these synthetics wherever they're not supposed to legally be. Deckard, our main character, is one of these Blade Runners, and we have our main antagonists, which are all synthetics. Their names are Roy Batty.
Can we do the names?
Their names are
Do we remember?
I know Roy. Roy is pretty... I confused Big Lebowski with Leon Kowalski a lot, but he's one of the synthetics. Pris, which she doesn't have a last name, which is interesting. And then one of them, what is the other one? She's the agent. Zora.
Yeah.
Zora.
Yeah.
Zora.
Zhora. That's
yes.
right.
I'm screwing up the blurb. Anyway, these are the antagonists. Rachel, which is another synthetic, and Deckard fight their way through this noir detective film action-y thingy.
Thriller.
In order... Yeah, all of them. It's just a line of different things. So Deckard's trying to fight off and kill all these synthetics, and we learn a lot about life, humanity, what it means to be living, and etc. That probably wasn't the most blurby that I could have done, but I think it sums up generally Blade Runner.
So it wasn't as bad as it could have been. It was scattered blurby. I like it.
Trademark.
Nathan, now's the time when we talk about our likes and dislikes.
Wah, 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 wah. Yes.
And we'll start with dislikes. What did you think? What did you hate? What made your skin crawl?
Yeah, well, why don't we start off smallest to greatest, and I'm pretty sure we're probably going to have the same greatest.
Ooh.
So the miniatures, many of them very good. When you look at the set design, Blade Runner is trying to encapsulate this amazing, epic environment, which is LA, this industrious, packed to the full, multicultural zone, the city. Many of the miniatures are great. In the opening sequence, for example, I think it gets very dated. The opening sequence, it looks very miniature-y. Some of the shots, I'm like, okay, that's a miniature because I kind of know what to look for, but also, that looks really good. But the opening sequence and some of the broad, wide-angle shots, they look like mats and they look like miniatures, which is unfortunate. The second thing also has to do with dating. When it comes to audio, in that time period... did you also have that one?
I knew this would come up at some point.
When you get to the the first Star Wars film, A New Hope, you get a 70s, 80s vibe. It's grainy. It feels like film. It's almost the same texture as the film. So it matches in that style. But we're talking about the future. Now, I respect the idea to incorporate the age, the period that Ridley was in, which was the 1980s, into the image of a future. That's what I like about Blade Runner, is it looks and feels grimy, real, analog. But the audio, capturing audio, was not one of their strong suits. It felt super grainy and it didn't really jive. And then the last one, this will be the biggest one. Deckard. He's the Blade Runner. He's the cop-like figure in the film. He's Harrison Ford. He's played by Harrison Ford. He's basically Harrison Ford as Deckard. I mean, there's...
It is Harrison Ford.
Well, and that's not a bad thing. I don't even dislike that part. but he's very, rough and tumble, right? And then his love interest, which is Rachel, she's a synthetic. They meet each other in, again, one of the opening sequences. He goes to Tyrell for some information about his case. And while he does that, he gives Rachel, this person he's just met, a test to test whether she's synthetic or not and whether she has the correct emotional responses. Tyrell later says, because Deckard took a long time figuring out if Rachel was truly a synthetic or not, Tyrell explains that she was given memories, and that's why she has more human responses, and it was harder for Deckard to detect. And so that brings a very interesting dynamic to Deckard, who's meant to kill synthetics who are on Earth, or loosed synthetics, someone who is not abiding with their programming. But she becomes a love interest for him. And there is a scene where the climax of their relationship, both literally and physically, is supposed to occur. And it's this very tense scene. And Deckard, we could kind of say pretty clearly, I would just say, the scene is played and performed in such a sense that it would be really hard for Deckard to avoid a sexual abuse claim. He basically rapes Rachel, or at least that's what we would consider it today. He makes her say things and she responds. And that was like really uncomfortable to watch. I skipped, some parts of it. I'd seen the film before. I was trying to wrap my head around it. Like, okay, I understand there's this kind of idea back then that men take, and that's really like, it's almost like his strength, him showing his strength is the appealing thing for the woman, right? It's done in such a way where I don't even think that alibi could exist. And I don't even think it's a dating issue. It's just uncomfortable. And I'm wondering if Ridley Scott was intending it to be uncomfortable. Either way, it just makes it feel broadly uncomfortable that she's kind of a hostage in this situation where Deckard is playing on his authority and her emotions. Yeah, that's probably my major dislike. Yeah, those three I think would be the main ones.
Yeah, I completely agree with that scene. I've seen this movie so many times, and every time I see it, I never understand what is happening. Is this guy supposed to be the hero? Yes. Then why is he behaving this way? Is this scene supposed to be received by the audience as a positive thing? In the plot structure, it is. Like you were saying, this is the height of their start of their relationship. But what actually happens, like, no, what is going on here? I don't understand. I feel like I'm an outsider here, that I'm somehow missing some key information to that scene. This is just off-putting and it's not enjoyable. Like, why is this here? Why is it written this way? And if it wasn't written this way, why'd it turn out this way? But yeah, I agree with that. So I'm going to sum up all of my dislikes in one dislike. And that is to say, I remember this film better than it actually is.
Oof.
For everything that I love about this movie, and we can talk a lot about likes here coming up, but for everything I like, there is something I dislike that is in the same category, I guess you'd say. So, the music is really good at parts, and then the music is really awful at others. Some of the dialogue lines are incredible, and some of the others are just miserable.
Yeah.
Some of the set design is incredibly cool, and some of it is miserably cheesy or bad. Some of the fight scenes are cool, some of them are bad. Everything that you find in this movie, that there's something really good about it, there's something right alongside of it that just gets in its way. Thankfully, I tend to not remember the negatives as strongly as I remember the positives. So whenever I think back on this movie, I always remember the positives, and I'm like, oh, Blade Runner! It's a defining film for me. And then I watch it, and each time I'm like disappointed because my memory of it is a lot more positive than it is.
Interesting.
Because, yeah, like what you were saying, some of the sound is bad. And I think some of that's more the Foley work, the sound effects that were done in post. There's something incredibly... I think you said it well. It doesn't jive. It doesn't jive with the picture. There's something about it that's off. It does not feel like it fits.
Interesting.
And as much as I like some of the music, we'll get into that later, some of the more vocal tracks.
Oh, sure. So there's a big blimp, right?
Well, no, those I didn't mind.
Okay.
Because that was sort of Japanese enka adjacent that was almost tying, this traditional Japanese style of music with ambient audio, which I think was great. I mean, I would listen to that anyway. But no, it was more the market tracks to me.
Oh, those ones. Yeah. Sure. Very cliche.
Yeah, very cliche. I wasn't the biggest fan of those. I love the lighting in this movie. But then the whole action sequence towards the end is in a poorly lit, empty building. So for everything that I like about the movie, right alongside it in the same category is something that I dislike. And because of that, actually watching the movie start to finish, I'm never left satisfied. And I always feel that this movie could have been far, far better than it was. Or maybe not could have been, but I want it to be. Because it's such an important movie to me.
It's funny because I come from Blade Runner 2049. That's how I heard about Blade Runner.
Oh.
And I remember watching Blade Runner 2049, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. Now, I'm partial. I love Denis Villeneuve. He's one of my favorite directors. But what I've noticed about this film, and this maybe bleeds into the likes, but it is so foundational. When we talk about good sequels, a good sequel necessitates either a terrible first film or a very strong first film. And in a way, I feel like these two films, that's why we're doing this in May, have become indivisible. Yes, there's a first, and you can always treat it as a first, but the second film has done so well, in my opinion, to bleed into one another and function as this single organism that I'm sad that I watched 49 first. That this film has all the earmarks of an 80s, I would even say 70s film. Just really grimy. That's one of the likes, by the way. It's so grimy that I love it. It's like if Star Wars was on, the thing on the iPhone that says sharpness when you're editing photos. Imagine putting that all the way up and now everything's crinkly, and that I love that part of the film. Anyway, I know we're bleeding more into likes, but
that's so funny because it's oh, if Star Wars was directed by Ridley Scott, oh wait, that's just Alien. Shall we get into the likes now?
Yes. Oh, I've already started.
We've kind of already been talking about him a bit. As I said, my likes in this movie are everything. Right alongside it is everything that frustrates me. But the music, we'll start with the music. The score by Vangelis is just, Maybe I need to listen to more early 80s synth stuff.
No. And I've said this before. I hate over synth 80s stuff. But this is the only film that I think it works incredibly well. What's that movie? Rain Man? There was some synth stuff, right?
I haven't seen Rain Man.
I think there is. I hate it. Anyway, but this is an amazing synth-topia.
Well, a lot of the synth in this movie is very ambient. It's not trying to be too action-y. Even during the action scenes, there's not much music. And it's when the action scenes end or start to slow down that the synth stuff starts to come up and everything. The one scene where he is fighting Zora and the synth really starts to pick up at the end. But yeah, I think the word I'm looking for here is soundscape. That's very much what this score does, is it sets a scene. It puts a picture in your mind, a texture that the whole movie just jumps off of and uses it to propel even further in your mind and in your imagination, which is so good. And with that, some of the sound design I really enjoy. Not so much the action sound effects that were used, the punching, body throwing, object breaking, stuff like that does not sound good. It sounds incredibly mono, incredibly forced into the scene. Even some of the gunshots to me felt odd. But it's all the other sounds, the sounds of the technology, the sounds of the, like you were saying, the dirty, grimy steaminess of the city that fits so well. I love the use of actual analog tech, the fact that it was shot on film, the fact that it was shot on anamorphic lenses. I won't talk too long on that because I already talked too much about anamorphic.
What about anamorphic?
It's just the visual design. It's like Scott finished Alien and said, what if we made Alien, but it was in a more livable environment? But then we took that environment and then aged it by like 50 or 60 years. And so it's all dirty and gross. It's just texture. Everything's texture. The audio has texture. The film has texture. All of the scenes are so loaded with stuff, from Deckard's apartment to the streets. Just everything is just either filled with grime or objects, or the walls themselves are very textury. Everything has a texture to it that's just, I love it. It's so good. And I do really enjoy the characters. Not all of them. Not so much Deckard, surprisingly. He seems very bland of a protagonist to me. But perhaps we can get more into that when we hit author's intent. But Rachel as a love interest, minus the one scene, she's basically perfect. Like, I wouldn't have changed anything with design, writing, acting. I thought she did amazing. I love Rutger Hauer's character and his acting. I think everyone does, especially if we want to jump to that last scene. I'll save that for the end because I'm sure you'll have something to say there. Yeah, the retro future tech. The flying cars, which were just a bunch of stuff with some fog machine underneath. It was great. I love it.
The chimes when they lift.
Oh, yeah, the use of wind chimes in the musical score. I forgot how many chime songs there were.
Can never have enough chimes, man.
Watching this again, I'm like, I like this. I like the use of different languages kind of all mashed together.
Yes.
So you have different accents speaking different languages on the streets. Just the idea that everyone can somehow exist and understand what these other languages are without actually needing to speak them. Yeah, just everything about this movie, except the toy scenes in the the apartment.
That's uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I make them. For our audience, JF Sebastian is this character that comes in midway. He is a genetic designer. He works with Tyrell. These synthetics who are loosed, who are being hunted by Deckard, are basically using him to get to the man himself, Tyrell, in order to ask him about, how do they extend their life expectancy and so forth.
And he lives by himself in an old apartment complex, and he makes toys, as he calls them, as a hobby. All those scenes are just weird to me. They feel really out of place.
And I would agree with that. I think they are in place in the sense that the director wanted something really weird, something creepy, dollish. I just don't think it fits with his dialogue. I would say, though, okay, when we're talking about dialogue, I said I complained a little bit about the cityscapes with the opening sections. But the two interrogation sections in the opening sequences, I believe the test is called Voigtkampf.
The Voigtkampf.
The dialogue for both of those sections, I loved them. I thought they were brilliant. The level of detail. So Deckard sits down in Tyrell Corporation's big dining room or whatever the area. He sits down on a big table in Tyrell Corporation. And he gives this test.
And the lighting is beautiful.
It is. The lighting at the end section, I think it's butt ugly, unfortunately. The outlook, John, you'll show a picture, when the sun is up, it just looked disgusting in the bad way, not the good way of Blade Runner.
Really? There was something about the look that it says so many things. The only source of light is the sun.
Sure.
There's no other lights in there. That's really bizarre. And as this detective, for the first time entering Tyrell Corporation, And looking at this, it's like, does anyone actually live here?
It has a bunch of meaning. I totally agree with that. But it looks painted. It looks like they got like a bunch of crayons and they started making a big yellow sun with the little lines coming out of it, right? I did not enjoy that. When we get to the lighting sequence where the blinds are taken down, that's where it's like, whoa, this is awesome. Very intimate. Super. But before that,
cool.
it's like, this is stupid. What are we doing here? I thought this guy had money for an actual sun. Anyway, but so that scene, right, in particular, also before when Leon, which is one of the antagonists, one of the synthetics who are loosed, gets tested, and that's a great bit of dialogue there. But this in particular, Deckard and Rachel are sitting down, and Deckard starts pelting her with these questions to try to get her animated in order to see whether she's a synthetic or not. The precision in which Deckard asks the questions and Rachel's responses. We know that he's trying to see if she's human or not. And we, at this point, don't know yet. Her responses are utterly perfect. What this results in is Rachel leaves, and then Tyrell talks to Deckard, and he says, you know, like, how long did it take for you to realize that she's a synthetic? And Deckard's like, what the heck is going on here? But the idea is there's like a whole reveal, and it's so perfect. I think the dialogue was written impeccably for conveying that result of what? She's not human, but we all assumed she was human. And her responses were so genuine. I thought that whole sequence was written perfectly.
I do agree. It is very well written, and I think it is very well acted. The way that they deliver their lines is so cool. I think that the scene's editing's a bit odd. Some of the way that their dialogue, it doesn't flow from one to the other. And I don't think that's an acting problem. I think that's an editing problem. The audio recording of their voiceover also sounds not great. But you were saying that we, the audience, don't know if she's human. When she first walks up, we can get that reflection in her eye, which is the first time that we see that motif enter the film.
No, doesn't it happen with Leon too?
Not at the beginning.
Really?
I don't think so.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Perhaps I'm misremembering.
Could you explain what that looks like for, what it was that, and also the detail, what it conveys?
You have a mirror and a light to reflect the light into the person's eyes, and then the light comes back into the camera.
Okay.
It is 100% a real effect. I've played around with it myself at home. It's fairly easy to do. It's a lot harder to do when you have a moving camera and moving actors. That's when it becomes challenging. But it's not too hard to do. And it gives a really nice, really eerie look to it.
What is the significance?
The significance in the film, what it means is that this person is likely a replicant. Now, funnily enough, in the opening title crawl, it says that the replicants are virtually identical to humans, except that you can clearly tell when a person's a replicant because their eyes glow, which is kind of a big flaw, don't you think?
I think moving through the film, maybe I didn't. Yeah, no, I did pick it up, but I don't know. Maybe the actual people there are not supposed to know. I'm not sure.
Deckard's not supposed to be convinced. Or is he? No, I think he is. He's supposed to go in thinking that she is a replicant, or at least when he meets her, because that's why he's surprised that it takes him this many tests, because this is something he hasn't encountered before. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're both wrong. Maybe we didn't even watch Blade Runner.
Support us on Coffee. That's CO-FI. It's replicants, people. Okay, so...
Oh, did you like Harrison Ford's really, really weird character change when he's trying to interview Zora?
That is brilliant. Okay, so I need you to lay this scene out.
So the premise is that Deckard, the detective, has tracked down one of the replicants that he's tasked with retiring to a club, and he finally is able to meet up with the gal, the replicant, and he's now trying to figure out a way to get more information out of her and at the same time to distract her so he can look through her things to find more information about the other replicants. And so to do so, he pretends to be a guy from what was it? What did he say?
The Board of Moral Abuses or something.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm actually here to the something of moral abuses. Yeah, that was amazing. So he switched his character. I don't think I've ever seen a noir film this thick just completely revert to Harrison Ford turning into a comedian. And she was a
Right.
100% straight man, like no like, well, I mean, a little bit of laughs, but like in character laugh. It was impressive. I don't think I've ever seen Harrison Ford change character that harshly into like a Minnesotan, kind of, on the teetering edge of 80s homosexuality. Very interesting. Never thought I would see that.
Though it's such an off-putting scene at the end as well. So it's the whole thing's weird. It's a weird movie. I love it.
It is what noir has always hoped to be and will never recover from because of Blade Runner. So anyway, are we getting it? Let's get into author's intent.
Before we get into that, you and I agreed that we would watch the final cut of the film.
Yes.
I guess there are 5 or 6 different cuts of this movie that are available.
Many much.
The main ones are the theatrical release, which was what came out here in the US. The international theatrical release, which actually had a bit more violence in it, which is odd when you think about it. The director's cut, which Ridley Scott gave the okay to recut the film, but did not have any direct role and actually didn't like the result. And then there is the 2009 final cut. What, that would be released 27 years later.
Wow.
And that is the one that Ridley Scott had full control over and put a bunch of time himself into getting the film to the place he wanted to. Mm-hmm. The reason that there was such a big difference between how it came out in theaters and how he wanted it was that audiences just didn't understand the movie. And so the production studio ended up injecting their own monologue from Deckard throughout the whole film, explaining to the audience what is actually happening, as well as a couple extra scenes, or rather one extra scene at the end that really clarifies, just to make sure no one gets lost as to what's going on. Mm-hmm. But because of that, they ended up putting their own spin and their own meaning to it that Scott did not intend nor want. And so we both agreed, you and I, to watch the final cut.
Yes.
And so, Nathan, with all that, what did you think that the author's intent was in Blade Runner?
So, I mean, we've talked about this before, especially I think on Ridley Talks. We think Ridley is always up for just a good old story, a movie that conveys, you said, what do electric sheep dream? Something like that. Come on, dyslexia, don't kick in now.
Do androids dream of electric sheep?
That one. Pretty sure that neither Ridley Scott or the writers actually wrote that novella, but they adapted it in some sense, right?
So Philip K. Dick worked with Scott in this film.
Okay.
But he ended up passing away before the film was released.
Oh, man.
And Scott ended up taking it in a different direction than what Philip actually had written in his novella. For example, the name of Blade Runner does not occur in the book whatsoever.
In that same sense, it's an adaptation. It's an adaptation of a very, I mean, I've heard that title, Exterior to This, but I unfortunately have not read it before, but it's well known within the psyche of our culture. And this adaptation, I think, really probably fits well within the framework of an adaptation, which is to tell the original story in film form to its best of its ability while conveying just a great story in of itself. I think that flows with Ridley Scott. I think it flows with this movie. The big points where I see the author obviously kind of interject their ideology is most definitely what they perceive of the future. We are a consumer society. This is a little bit of what Wall-E talked about before, but in a much different light. There was almost an air of positivism and optimism in the sense that Wall-E's universe, most of the humans got to escape and live on and get fat and get really nice on these big super yachts, these space yachts. But in this world, there is a possibility to go off world, but very few can go. They have to be wealthy, and the Earth that we now know then, or at least in the context of the film, is incredibly grimy. It is decomposing while at the same time producing. And so I think Ridley Scott really is playing into the mind of, okay, when 2019 rolls around, at least in this allegorized sense, this is what humanity is striving toward, and this is their end. When it comes to, and we've talked a lot about this in the Alien franchise, synthetics, I guess since it's made by the same people, Ridley Scott, that it doesn't really matter if I say synthetics or replicants. So there you go. That's my logic and reasoning. But these replicants... But
there was no spewing of milk by the replicants.
Which is interesting. I like the milk. I like the idea that they're a little bit more farther removed than... These replicants are very similar to humans. That is a big point. When do things that we've made become sentient? And that's a word we use a lot of times in philosophy and also just in broad topic conversations. But I think that word is very applicable in the larger sense. When is something that perishes able to love and able to exist and have that same level of opportunity, let's say, as humans do? I think one of the big things that is reiterated by these replicants as Deckard is trying to take them out one by one, these replicants say, isn't it something to live in fear? Isn't it terrible to live in fear? And the idea that these replicants are being dominated and that they die, they have a 4-year lifespan. Is that enough? There's a good bit of dialogue with Tyrell and Roy, the main antagonist, that I think sums that up pretty well. But broad brushstroke, I'll just start it by that, and then we'll probably have a more detailed conversation back and forth once I put that out there. So, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that you're on the right direction. I try to not have such a broad idea of what the author's trying to say. I try to find, like, what is the thing? And I think that that's kind of summed up in the last scene, because the whole film, it's clear that these replicants are designed to be like people in every way, but the emotions were giving them too much freedom, so they rejected their ability to have emotions. They designed them to not have emotions. But they found that in the process of removing emotions, or the capability of emotions, that emotions were able to develop on their own. And so because of that, because the Tyrell Corporation and humanity in general could not prevent the creation that is supposed to replicate them from becoming more like them, they had to put in that 4-year time limit. A
expiration date?
Planned obsolescence.
That's definitely different than expiration date. I'm thinking of my milk.
Milk expires because we can't make it last longer, whereas planned obsolescence is the idea that something works perfectly fine, but the manufacturers deem that it will stop working after a certain amount for various reasons, either because they want to keep you buying more products, or in this case, because they can't control the product itself. And so all of these events lead towards the end. Even in the opening title, they say that the act of putting down these replicants is not called killing them. It is referred to as retirement. So they view these replicants not as people, not as beings of their own, but merely as machines. Machines to serve a purpose and then to stop serving that purpose. But the end of the film, the big climactic scene, just after the fight between Roy and Deckard, it culminates on the top of this raining rooftop amidst the glow of neon lights, as Roy, having the opportunity to put an end to Deckard's life as he hangs many stories over the streets below, he chooses to save Deckard instead. And after saving him, he has the amazing Tears in Rain speech, which basically, I think, sums up what the author's intent was. That regardless of whether we determine whether something is living or not, the fact that it is capable of experiencing things is its own vindication of its existence. Perhaps I'm wrong in saying that.
No. The reason why I started broad is to get to the particulars. But particulars are based in the logical framework of someone's thinking.
Yes.
There's a reason why we mourn for Roy at the end of the film. It's because these corporations have made him have this planned obsolescence. Another story plot that I'd like to get into is the whole concept of memory. Now, this is really important to Blade Runner 2049, and they really blow up this whole idea, make it larger and investigate what they mean when it comes time to tie memories to emotional responses. What I saw in Roy, he brought up memories of his own. In fact, throughout the film, he keeps talking about, I've seen things that you humans wouldn't even be able to conceive of. And that's actually a repeated motif through his character. But that relates to memory. And so there seems to be both a wistful structure and a redemptive structure in two characters. I wonder if you agree about this. Roy is the wistful character. He's the kind of martyr for this idea of memories. And these creatures, like you said, have this innate experiential ability and is cut short. But the redemptive character that defines this is Rachel, who is able to have, again, an odd relationship just because of how they shot that scene that we talked about before, but in a sense, have a relationship and survive at the end of the film with Deckard. And Deckard acknowledges his love, maybe, if we can call it that, for Rachel, while he does not also kill Roy in the end of that film. So it's a recognition on the human of both parts and both accounts of what these replicants can achieve when it comes to their emotional status. I agree. Let's go into the particulars about that. What do you think about that framework?
Well, I think that you are spot on. I legitimately forgot about the focus of memories as I was piecing my thoughts together. Yes, those kind of underlie the heart of what is being communicated. Because if you were to remove all of the talk of memories from this film, then nothing has any impact. And on that topic of memories, do you want to tackle the unicorn?
I have no idea. I rewatched the movie, and I still have no idea what the heck the unicorn, meaning maybe it ties to Rachel, but that's like, oh, she's the unicorn. But that's only because I know the second movie. Other than that, I would be totally in the dark. What is it? Do you know? Do you have some insider information?
So I have a hunch, but I think that it can be summed up better. There is the scene after Deckard gets attacked and is saved by Rachel when she shoots Leon. And they both go back to his apartment, and he's there washing his face in the sink. And she comes into the kitchen, and they have a little bit of dialogue. And then he walks behind her, out of focus, and turns around, puts his hand on her shoulder, and says some lines of dialogue. And I don't remember off the top of my head what they are.
Harrison
But
Ford
in that
things.
scene, you can actually see the reflection in Deckard's eyes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That is the only scene in the entire film when he is out of focus of the image. And because of that, the eye reflection is a lot stronger than it would be if he was in focus. Even though it is dim and distant, you can still see it. So, one of two things could have happened, because we see the reflection in Rachel's eyes in that scene as well. A, this was a mistake, and the reflection was not supposed to be in his eyes. 2, the reflection in his eyes was intentional and implies that Deckard himself is a replicant, which means then that his memories are likely fake as well, of his mother and his past. Additionally, he remembers the unicorn, which he never talks about. It shows up in one scene and then is never mentioned until the very end of the movie when, I don't remember the character's name.
Guff or something. It's not
Gaff, that's right.
Gaff. Yeah.
Gaff, who works for the police department that brought in Deckard, he is seen making origami throughout the whole film out of various things. And at the end, Deckard finds a origami of a unicorn on the floor, implying that the police department knows that Deckard is a replicant and that they have and are using a replicant to take down the other replicants.
So
When the film came out, that was a big discussion.
Yeah.
The question was, is Deckard a replicant?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wasn't alive then, but I've been told that that was the big discussion about the film. In my opinion, with what the film has given us, what the film's narrative is about, and the way that the narrative is structured, I think that he is a replicant based on what is told by the end of the film.
Okay.
And so with that, the idea of memories, their importance, our reliance on them, and what they mean as people experiencing things, I think plays a very, very, very large role. And you are completely right in bringing that up. I don't know how I forgot that.
So let's see. I'm not convinced just because Blade Runner 2049 I consider a true sequel. Even though it's signed off by Ridley, but it's not Ridley's film. I would say I don't think it matters much because Deckard ultimately is an arbiter of justice and the surrogate for us. We accept Rachel. We accept Roy through Deckard's interactions with them. And, spoilers in 2049, his, let's just say, procreative actions with Rachel lends itself to him being a human. And also he has longer than 4-year lifespan, but whatever. So I'm not totally convinced that he's a replicant, but I also would say maybe it doesn't matter that much in the sense when it comes to memories. I do think it's important to note he is the surrogate in which we as the audience are pushed and moved toward validating the replicant's right to existence. So because Deckard does not kill Roy, that is why we are supposed to accept them as beings like we are. So I think that's what his character really does and lends himself to.
And I would agree with that. And I think that it's that much more effective then in the end, when he comes to that realization, finding the unicorn and then realizing everything that's been going on. Hold on, I never told this story to anyone. Why is there a unicorn here?
Then again, we're never told that how Deckard knows Rachel's memories.
I don't think it would be too hard to believe that Tyrell explained it to him.
Sure.
Again, this movie did leave a lot of people in the dark, which is why they had to add the monologue. I do think that it does take the story a bit further by blurring the line even more between the real and the replicant.
Yeah.
Because in the end, if this is true, that Deckard is a replicant, everything that we've learned throughout the film, that there isn't as big of a difference between people and the replicants, because they both are seemingly alive, even going as so far as to having that symbolic use of the dove flying away from Roy as he perishes, just showing how it almost doesn't matter now what is a replicant and what isn't. And I think that is in part why Deckard ends up running away with Rachel. Mm-hmm. Not just because he loves her, but now it's not a matter of people destroying property. It is now a matter of living thing attempting to kill living thing because they don't agree with it.
Right. Ambiguity, that's important. It actually kind of comes to a good line in the story. Pris, while being sheltered by J.F. Sebastian, which is the genetic designer, they have a conversation once. Pris's boyfriend, Roy Batty, kind of shows up on the scene, and she references to J.F. Sebastian once he discovers, these guys are replicants, they're not humans. Pris says, "I think, therefore I am." Isn't that right? That's the line she says. I think, therefore I am, right? Doesn't that verify my claim to be existent, to be more human than human, as Tyrell would put it? When Pris says this, she's quoting Descartes. This is really, it's not about being human or not. It's actually about knowing things. Descartes, in his Discourse on Method, he lays out how he can know that he knows something. And he goes through this whole thing where he rips apart every presupposition, tries to get to the fundamental claim. And he lands on, I think, therefore I am. And okay, now if I can start on that, if I can be confident on that, then I can go from there and I can build my information. So Priss is actually misquoting Descartes, which is funny. I mean, she's not the smart one of the group. Apparently, she's a pleasure model, I think. Roy probably should have said like, hey, you're misquoting Descartes. That's kind of bad.
No, he was too busy like hopping through dark halls in his underpants.
He's a Dutch actor, so I don't think he understands the French as much as we do. So that's good. The principle, I think, is a little flawed, but what she's trying to convey is because I have an intellect, therefore I am human, I am living. In the misuse of Descartes, she reveals something I don't think she initially intends. A computer can have a first principle. A computer can have a principle in which they know what they know because it has been inherited by their programming from their programmer. This is where I think maybe we go on to what we as believers can take away from this. I've heard the claim many times before. We as humans inherit our existence of humanity through our creator. How is it any different for a program to be just as, well, this is the argument, just as human, or we can just put a just as blank as we are because they inherit their programming also from a creator, which just happens to be us. So I think that's where the split, the division may happen. I think Ridley's answer is there is no division. The replicants are in the exact same position we are in, and therefore they can be treated as human. But Nietzsche would not like that. Nietzsche would say there's no division there. There has to be. Replicants has to be in some way different than humans. And now I feel like the debate starts. In what way is a replicant different than humans, especially when it comes to origin?
You're going to have to guide me with questions, I think.
That was a lot. What are your thoughts? Just spitball.
It was a lot. What are my thoughts? Well, for one thing, I would agree that Scott does seem to imply that they're both one and the same. Again, I'll pull attention back to that dove. I think that dove is supposed to symbolize a soul leaving a body.
Sure.
In this case, as Roy dies, the dove flies away.
Yes.
Symbolizing that he has moved on in whatever spiritual sense Scott may be getting at there. Now, I think that where this falls apart a bit, and you had kind of already mentioned this, is the idea that if we inherit humanness from our creator, why can't synthetics, replicants, inherit just as much humanity from us? Well, for one thing, we as Christians believe that we were made in the image of God, as Genesis says. However, we were only made in the image of God. We were not made to be equal to God. We are not equal in power, nor stature, nor might, nor intellect, nor beauty, nor glory, nor radiance, nor capability, nor imagination, nor just everything. Absolutely in every single way, we are lesser than he is. But we are designed to look like him in all those different ways. At least how we were made to look in the garden, before sin entered the world, through our actions. And so if that were the case, I would say that the difference between God and us, if you want to take a picture, let's say a two-dimensional picture would be us, then God is something like a 16-dimensional reality of what that two-dimensional picture is supposed to be implying. And so if you were then to take that two-dimensional picture and say, okay, well, now that two-dimensional being is going to create its own being in its own image, well, now you just have like a one-dimensional being because there's no way that we can make something equal to ourselves. And even if we could, we now live in a world that is fallen with sin. And so if we are to make something equal to ourselves, then it will be just as sinful as we are. We cannot make something that is removed of sin on our own.
You know, the more and more I think about it, I think the idea that circumstances do not make something unique is a lie. Soon, probably, just what I hear in the popular media at least, we will not need surrogate mothers, soon being a very broad defined soon, where we will be able to make, basically wombs exterior to humans. And we can do all the things, and there's moral things with that, whatever. But the principle kind of stands that's a completely unique circumstance. And there's a lot of variables that are different than in an actual womb, right? So for example, a mother has a body. Fun fact, just letting you know. Women have...
In case you didn't realize it.
So we're online. You never know. Maybe an AI is listening. They're like, wow, no kidding.
I think maybe is not the right thing. An AI is definitely being trained off of this conversation.
Well, we're happy to have you, or have it. So there's a body in there, and then there's sensory things, right? And even if you could do a 1-for-1, even if you could train a synthetic body, a replicant body, to have all the same actions as a mother would, it's in a different circumstance. And that's where I think the argument maybe starts catching. God uniquely made us in a certain circumstance. When we transfer a circumstance away from its first principle, which is a man and a woman, they make a child, and that child grows up and is also generative, has a relationship with a man and woman, and that child becomes generative, et cetera, et cetera. When we start creating something that isn't that image, so when we take something that it may be biological, which I believe replicants in some sense are biological, right? They're different than synthetics, if my view is right, right?
Yes, they mention quite a few times in this film that they are made out of biology, that they are not made out of metal, machine parts, gears, electricity,
Yes.
or whatnot. That the replicants are biological beings.
Yes. So that the way I'm going to bridge this argument is how you ended your argument, which is the fallenness of man. If it's a different circumstance, its originating circumstance, at least when it comes to replicants' start is in a fallen world. In many of the characters that we've kind of studied and surveyed, a lot of them have to do, especially when it comes to David and Alien Covenant, have to do with the transference of sin. When I think about it in circumstances and when I think about it in fallenness, it's a different circumstance than human, which already makes it a different thing. It may have different qualities or characteristics, or it might have similar qualities and characteristics, but it's already different in circumstance. And number two, it's a percolated version, a drip coffee version of our fallenness, which may amplify its intensity, which we see in the character of David in the Alien franchise.
Well, I think it's interesting. If you remember at the beginning when Deckard is having a conversation with the chief of police and is getting information on these replicants, this Nexus 6 variant, and he mentions that the replicants have no emotions because they have had their capability of having their emotions designed out of them. And yet, they've been found to generate their own emotions. I think it's interesting if you look at this film and keep in mind the situation then that these replicants are in. They're experiencing emotions for the first time, and these emotions may not even be the same as our emotions.
That's a good point.
That there's a reaction and a response that is occurring. And not only do they not know what it is, we don't actually know what it is.
Yes.
They're experiencing something, and with how stilted some of the scenes are laid out, how stilted they behave, it's almost this like erratic breaking down of what emotions even are into something that almost isn't. At least that was the impression that I was getting as I was thinking through these things, was just how, if we are to take what is told as true in this film, then we don't even know what these replicants are going through. And I'm not even sure they know or would be able to accurately describe it, which is why then some of their reactions and actions to things are as they are. They're not always entirely coherent. and they don't always flow. There's something off about a lot of it. While that might be off message from what the author is trying to say, I think that that is kind of on message of what we are trying to say.
Amen. That's good. I realize more and more while we're talking too, when it comes to how do we deal with these figures, debating kind of actually which brought to some confusion to what as we believers can take away. This is interesting. I think we're still playing on Ridley Scott's terms. We're playing with the fact that, oh, well, they might be human. And we're not using a biblical framework. But we do have a biblical framework. I was posing the questions of like, okay, what if these things, and the principle of them, not being in the same circumstance might in Ridley Scott's universe make a contrast between them being human or this other thing. But in a biblical framework, no, they're not human. And okay, that's it. That's pretty simple. But the question usually doesn't stop there because of course, they're not human. I don't think even Ridley Scott believes that they're human. He thinks that they're this other thing though. And he bleeds, I'm using bleeds a lot in this, but I like the word. Maybe it's the noir thematic thing that I'm getting into blood and grime or whatever, but.
Well, it was because Roy Batty stabbed himself with a nail.
He has an amazing, weird, psychotic dialogue in that section that I really want to be able to memorize.
You just need to start howling like a wolf and you can call it good.
But the issue is, how do we react now to these things? That's the question. It's almost a way of praxis. Because there is, when it comes to the ontology of these creatures, we don't actually know what to do with them in a secular mindset, in Ridley Scott's mindset, in his probable moral relativism. But we do, as biblical creatures, or biblical humans, shouldn't we, in praxis, because they're not human, treat them with the same respect as we would with all anthropomorphized creatures, which is something that even the Bible does. The Bible says that the trees will cry out and sing the praises of God. Now, will the trees actually sing the praises of God? Please, Lord, I really hope so, because that would be awesome. I want to see a bunch of ants, at your final coming. That would be awesome. But either way, we're supposed to treat things the way that God treats things. And so it's a top-down view. Humans, we're fallen, so we're going to treat other things, like replicants, in a fallen manner. But Scripture takes it completely a different way and says, hold on, we're looking from top down. We're supposed to turn our eyes on Jesus and treat everything below us, including ourselves being creation, from the Creator's perspective. And that's why I think Ridley is getting confused with who's the actual creator here. Ridley is saying, okay, yeah, of course, we should treat these replicants as humans. But who created humans? And that's where the fall, which often in our dialogues about this, it comes down to how the fall interacts with these films and how the filmmakers view it. But we have an answer. So John, do you have anything more to add about that? What would you say believers can take away about this film?
I do like what you said about the looking at things from a different perspective and treating things not as the film would say that these human replicants are humans, but rather to look at them as a created thing. And honestly, I don't think about that much in life. There are some times that I forget that, oh yeah, we were made in the image of God to take care of the planet. As we said in WALL-E, to rule over it. Both to be in charge of it, but also to care for it and to tend to it. And I often don't think of that when I go outside and walk amongst nature or am in the presence of animals. On the one hand, we have sin that kind of has pushed us in the direction of we own the planet, we'll do with it what we want. And then we have the other extreme from that, which is the planet is more important than us, as I kind of talked about a little bit in WALL-E. And I don't think I think about that much. Just to look at what we have made, especially in recent years with the advancements in computers and AI, to look at that and to definitively say, no, these are not people. These are not human. These are not more valuable than human, nor are they equal to human, but are actually less than human in the light of companies saying that within X amount of years, AI will be as intelligent as humans or surpass the intelligence of humans. And the whole world seems to be moving in that direction, that computers are becoming more important than people. And so I think that this is a nice, sobering discussion to come back to the idea that, well, no, we are more important than animals, and we are more important than our own creation in the light of what God has done and who God is. Not because we're so important in our own pride, but because God himself became like us, not fallen, but destructible, limited, and yet was without limit somehow. I don't quite understand how Jesus is fully man and fully God, but I believe he pulled it off. But he chose to do this. And why? Well, because he loves us. And because he knows that eventually he will have to carry out his justice on the earth, as he is a just God. And we as people have sinned. We have broken his laws. We have trespassed his commandments. And because of that, we deserve destruction. But he didn't want that. He didn't want to have to destroy us, and so he figured out a way around that. And that was to destroy himself, to destroy his own son in our place.
Amen. Yeah. When we think of a book, a character in a book, or even Deckard, some of us can relate to his character, the gruffness, or, his desire, his love, even if he's a replicant or not, the idea that he needs to find someone. Rachel is this individual who maybe is the only one Deckard can get close to. At least this is how this narrative puts out. And sometimes we can humanize Deckard, even though he's a fictional character. In the same way, our creations, sure, one day may come alive, may be a Deckard in the flesh that exhibits all these things that we appreciate and that we recognize within ourselves. Does that mean we discard them? No. We don't discard Deckard. Of course not. We don't discard every copy of Blade Runner that we own. That'd be nonsense. But what we do is like what Tolkien said would happen at the end of the age. That one day, God would be the Lord of man, of creatures, and of elves. And so maybe, this is hypothetical, but maybe one day when AI is super intelligent, acts in similar ways that we see in ourselves, maybe in the coming of the age, AI won't be abolished, but it'll be sanctified. I don't know. Maybe that's heretical. Maybe that's a little outlandish. Maybe we'll just live in huts in the new heavens and the new earth. Be Luddites. That's what God is, which I don't think so. But, I have this image that, yes, fallen man has created most definitely and will create most definitely a imperfect and flawed, brilliant, some may say beautiful creation, like a replicant. But God will still, no matter what the circumstance we bring on this earth, will sanctify it for his ends and cleanse it completely so that God will be vindicated as truly good.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what takes place.
Indeed. Amen. Well, any more closing comments or sentiments, John?
Well, as difficult as this movie is to discuss, it is a very fun movie to watch.
Amen. Well, you know what's also fun? Not bingo. Who said bingo was fun? No one likes bingo.
Ooh, that's a bingo.
That's a deep cut. Yeah, Inglourious Bastards. That is also way better than bingo. But you know what's even better than Inglourious Bastards, John?
You have the secrets. Reveal them to me.
Coffee. That is KO/FI.
I didn't see that coming.
.com /Shpielberg. It has a bunch of extra content. We we beg and we plead with YouTube to banish all the ads from our channel. And we do so at our own expense. If you'd like, please consider supporting us at Coffee. We'd very much appreciate it. Right, John?
Absolutely.
So let's go out from here. We have our first May the Blade Runner Be With You episode done. for this very special month. Some of you guys will see some random content about Star Wars. Just get that out of your mind, okay? That is total BS. They don't know what's going on, all right? We know what's going on. We hope you enjoy this episode. Next episode, we will be covering Blade Runner 2049. I will be the co-host, the co-host for that event. But I think we can take away today, at least, the principles we set forward, right, John? Just the idea that we are in God's creation. Like John said, we should be conscious about what exactly this world means to us, that we're supposed to subdue it, as it says in Genesis. We're supposed to subdue it and multiply and bless it and richly bless it with everything in our being. We need to do that. So go out from here. If you want to take a hike, if you want to go on a walk, if you want to just sit down, look at some, screensavers of nice, beautiful terrain, do so and help that inspire you and glorify the creator who created those things. John, anything you want to say?
Yeah, movies are fun.
Amen.